In this video, we're going to be using SAP Business Objects Data Services to connect to a Hadoop distributed file system and import that data into SAP HANA. So the first thing we need to do is to log into Data Services. So we do that by going to Start. We can access that from All Programs, Data Services, and we choose the Data Services Designer. Log in with your credentials. So for me it's student and the password is welcome1, and then it logs you into the system. So the first thing we need to do is go and have a look at the Hadoop system. So Hadoop has been installed on a Linux box, but we're able to access the data through a browser. So I've got a URL here that connects to my Hadoop system. So as you know, Hadoop or HDFS essentially imports files which are very, very large. So to show you the file we're going to deal with, I'm going to go to my file system. Obviously I'm now browsing the Unix box, and when I go to my folder input, we have a file here called HDFSB data. This is what the data looks like. It's basically a delimited file, and I can actually view this file through the Hadoop front end. Again, it's a small sample, it's a small data set. So you can see basically the file is delimited, and we have to process this first in Data Services, then add a transform to identify a key column because we're loading it into a column store table within SAP HANA, and then of course we execute the job. So to do this, I'm going to close my Hadoop system, and I'm going to go back to the Data Services repository. So the first thing we need to do on our 7th tab, which is the file formats, is we're going to create a new HDFS file source. To do this, we right click on HDFS files, select new, and the first thing we need to do is give this file format a name. So I'm going to call mine simply HDFS. We then need to put in the host name of where the Hadoop HDFS system is. So this is where my system is, and I'm just going to click on tab. So that's the name node host. Next we need to enter the port, so I'm going to enter the number 9000. So now that I've done that, I need to specify where the file is that I want to import. So that is the root directory and the file name. So my root directory is /user /Hadoop and then /input. Lastly, of course, we then need the actual text file that we're going to import. So mine is hdfs_b_data-txt. So for now I'll just click on save and close, just so we've got it, and then I'll reopen up that file. So there we can see we've got the data format or the data structure of the source data, so I'm just going to save and close. So the next step is very straightforward. It's just normal data services. So I'm going to create a new project called HDFS. Within that I'll create a new job called HDFS, and I'll create my data flow. Now I'm going to drag on the HDFS file as a source, but what you'll notice is that we don't have a magnifying glass, so you can't really preview the data before you execute it. Again, I'm going to add on a query transform because we need to have a primary key if we're loading to a HANA column store table. And the last thing is to load this into a HANA table. So I'm going to load it into my trusted STS schema, and the file name will be HDFS. There we go. So I'll click on OK, and I'll join up the query transform to the target table. So the last step is to go inside the query and decide which columns we want to output. So actually my column number 1 is my primary key, so I'm going to just copy this across. I'm going to call this load ID, and it's a primary key. Then I just need to select all the other columns that I want to take across, drag them to the right hand side, and let go. So I'm copying all the other columns as well. So now that we've done that, we can do a validate just to make sure that there are no issues in the query transform, and as you can see, everything looks okay. So I'm then going to save all my work. Again, we've got the job and the data flow which is going to execute. So then, because I've saved my job, all I need to do is right click on the job, select execute, and click on OK. What we should see is that we're using some pig scripting, which is a proprietary scripting language within HDFS. And this is going to actually do the transformation of the data. We can see that the pig script is finished, and we can see that the job has finally executed. And there were no errors. And clicking on the monitor log, we can see that 1500 rows were processed. So now again, I'm going to close my windows, and then I'm going to go back into my data flow. And then we now have the magnifying glass next to the target object. So all I need to do to look at the data is select the magnifying glass. And there we can see our data which came from our HDFS system within Hadoop. Now, of course, now that it's loaded there, we can now go back to HANA Studio just to verify that the data is actually correctly in our HANA schema. Of course, we can see that here because we've got the name of the database, but just to be sure, I'm going to expand my database, expand the catalog, go into the schema STS, expand the tables, and now we have a table called HDFS, and I'll right click that and go to Open Data Preview, and then we can see the data. So that's a very, very simple way in which we can use SAP Business Objects Data Services to connect to a HDFS system within Hadoop, extract the data, add a primary key to the data because we need to load it to a column stored data in SAP HANA, and then finally output the data into a SAP HANA database.